Hi guys, Virgil with FaceOff here. Today we're going to be talking about Sheik's forward air. Everyone knows that on hit, Sheik's forward air is a great tool for combos and spacing herself in neutral, but do they know of its capabilities on shield? That's what I'm going to be talking about today, and the results may surprise you. Forward air, or fair as most call it, is a frame 5 aerial that has deceptive range, minimal ending lag, and is -2 on shield. This move is Sheik's most reliable combo starter at low to mid-low percents and is also the safest move she has. Yes, even safer than Nair. It has greater range, can hit above and below her, can be activated while drifting away by using the C-stick, has better frame data on shield, etc. Anyway, as a foundation for the rest of the video, I'd like to quickly establish how safe Fair is by showing a couple of examples where Fair lands on shield, but Sheik escapes being punished from even some of the best and most common out-of-shield punish options in the game. Also, I think it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, for anyone who might not know, the Fair needs to be fast-falled in order to be optimally safe. Otherwise, Sheik doesn't get to the ground fast enough to follow up with anything. In this video, Fair will be the doorway to all other options I talk about. Just to give you a brief summary of what to expect, I'm going to start by talking about Sheik's crouch, which I feel is a highly underutilized tool in her kit. Then I'll move to follow-up options out of Fair and go over theory and application. Alright, let's get into it. In my opinion, Sheik's crouch is one of the best crouches in the game. I'll tell you why. Reason number 1. After spacing an attack, whether it's down tilt or fair or what have you, it can be very difficult for an opponent to punish Sheik's crouch out of shield. She's just too low to the ground, and even if they can reach her, she can put up her shield at any moment because she hasn't committed to any other action. While crouching, she becomes shorter than the shortest character in the game, which is Kirby, and even matches the height of his crouch. Look how low this is. This is nuts. All the lowest crouches in the game are about this same height. However, not all of them offer the ability to crawl while crouching, so I'll exclude them from this crouching competition. The only crouches that rival Sheik's in regards to low height, mobility, and low pokes are Snakes and Wii Fit trainers. As you can see here, they are just a touch lower to the ground than Sheik, and also have the ability to crawl while down there. However, both Snakes and Sheik's down tilts come out quickly, while still keeping them low to the ground, giving them a good poking tool as they low profile attacks. Wii Fit's down tilt doesn't quite boast the same advantage. She stays low, but only until she flips over. Reason number 2. Sheik has one of the 3 best stand to crouch height differentials in the game. That's basically the difference between her standing height and her crouching height. Her crouch goes so low, for your opponent, it's like they're fighting 2 different characters. They go from fighting Sheik to fighting Kirby. Okay, so why is this relevant? Having such a large height differential can be equivalent to suddenly shrinking your body down to a fraction of its original size, making it harder for you to get hit by aerial attacks, especially if done suddenly. You guys have seen the Marvel movie Ant-Man, right? Ant-Man would be in a fight with some bad guys at his normal human size, but when someone would attack him, he'd shrink down to a much smaller size, causing the enemy to whiff the attack. Same premise here. If the Sheik community were to start honing and implementing this concept, opponents would have to start aiming for Sheik's knees in order to consistently hit her from the air. Oh yeah, something else to know about crouching. When you're crouching, you don't need to let the control stick return to its neutral position before inputting something else. Continue to hold down while inputting any action, including shielding, attacking, grabbing, and even running. If you want to run, just hold down to crouch, then quarter circle forward to run. This method also works for side specials. No need to let the control stick reset to its neutral position. Let's take a look at a few examples of how safe Sheik's crouch actually is. Now I want to be clear, those are just concepts so that you know what the crouch is capable of. I wouldn't recommend doing that Mario when in actual matches or trying to crouch clouds up B. Don't hit someone's shield and crouch within grab range because most players without a tether grab will likely shield grab instead of using an aerial. I just wanted to show you the drastic shift in her hurt box to get the creative juices flowing in your brain. Speaking of shield grabs, I've got a couple of killer counters for that later in the video. Now that we've established some of what Sheik's crouch can do, let's move on to her fair to down tilt, which is essentially crouch 2.0. Down tilt comes out on frame 5 and keeps Sheik about as low to the ground as a standard crouch, so it's very safe and can be extremely difficult to punish out of shield for a lot of characters. Down tilt also has a hitbox that confirms into some of her earliest kills. You want to know what else makes this crouch 2.0? It actually makes Sheik crouch faster than her standard crouch. Standard crouch gets Sheik to her optimal position on the ground around frame 5. Down tilt gets her there on frame 1. It's literally an instant crouch. Now, don't confuse that with thinking that the hitbox comes out on frame 1. No. She gets to the ground on frame 1, but the hitbox comes out on frame 5. Alright? Don't forget. As you can see from the first two clips, if you fair their shield and they respond immediately with an attempt to punish or retreat with an out of shield aerial, the area will miss you because you're down tilting. However, because you're down tilting, you will also whiff your attack. The purpose of down tilting after fair isn't just to try to hit the opponent. I want to make that clear. It's to cover multiple points of interest. It threatens the player who tries to shield grab, while simultaneously protecting Sheik from out of shield aerial threats. 2 birds, 1 stone. The definition of efficiency. By the way guys, I'm not just making a video showing off Sheik tech. Mad props to the people who have done that. That stuff has been super helpful. We need that stuff. Those discoveries make the character better, but unfortunately they don't make the players better. Adjustments of the mind make players better. Providing understanding of the game makes players better. I'm here to help you understand and build the structure of your offense. Making efficient decisions and understanding why you make the choices you make helps you grow as a player and changes how you view the game. That's where the improvement comes. Now, I won't be able to do that in just one video, but I can help you understand a part of what makes fair such a good tool and how you can use it. Anyway, fortunately, because of Sheik's frame data, even if she whiffs the down tilt, she's oftentimes still able to get a punish before they get the chance to input anything else. So it really feels like a win-win for her. Now, on the flip side, I don't recommend using fair to down tilt on characters that have tether grabs or out of shield options that cover a decent distance, like Link's up B, because if they shield the down tilt, you'll get punished. For characters like that, feel free to use other options instead of fair to down tilt, like fair to fair, which is actually really good. Fair to fair is really good, y'all. Empty hop to grab, or tomahawk grab as most people call it, is really good as well. Or my personal favorite, move in and out of their range to bait them to drop shield. Using what I like to call presence pressure is a great way to trick people into reacting when you're close to them, even though you don't actually do anything, you're just standing there. Lastly, if they shield the down tilt, I recommend shielding very briefly after down tilt finishes just in case they try to counter with something, then resetting the pressure with another well-spaced fair. Slingshot fair is my preference in this scenario because it sets you up to potentially cover rolls as well. I think this reset works for her as a general rule of thumb, but do what works best for you and your playstyle. Her pressure becomes more effective as you loop in other options to accompany the fair. I know not every Sheik is into playing super safe all the time, like me, that's just my preference. So if you're more into high risk options, then I've got just the thing for you. Sheik has 2 single jabs and then a rapid jab flurry. I'll refer to the single jabs as jab 1 and jab 2. Jab 1 is Sheik's fastest attack option, which comes out on frame 2 and is -12 on shield. Quick side note, jab 1 is only 1 frame slower than using your shield, so I personally tend to jab as a defensive option instead of shielding in some scenarios, It just helps me keep my pressure going in instances where it otherwise would have ended. Anyway, fair to jab is such a great way to catch people off guard, simply because an unspaced aerial is oftentimes too tempting for someone not to try and punish. In my experience, they often shield the fair, but because it was quote unquote unsafe or unspaced, they try to punish it with a shield grab or an aerial or an up B or what have you, but end up getting jabbed instead. Here's an example of it. Well, what if they shield the fair and the jab? You might be thinking, that's incredibly risky to be so close to the opponent only to use a move that's minus 12 and doesn't garner any significant rewards, like a smash attack otherwise would. Well, during the 12 frames of end lag, Sheik can actually throw out a second jab, jab 2, anywhere between frame 4 and frame 12, forcing the opponent into a guessing game of where their window of retaliation will be. If your opponent guesses wrong, it's possible to loop these two jabs for a second or third time, changing up the timing of the execution to your liking. However, I don't recommend doing too many loops. Remember, your opponent isn't the only one guessing here. You are too. At that distance, you don't want to guess for too long because at some point you'll guess wrong and get punished. So once you get a jab confirmed, go ahead and finish it off real quick with rapid jab, which will give you good damage and will put you in advantage state. These jab loops are called stagger jabs, which in and of itself is a common concept in fighting games, and they come in handy for extending shield pressure. I don't recommend doing stagger jabs a whole lot, as each time you do it, you tempt fate and could get punished for it. Some characters can punish it better than others, but they are a great option for extending your pressure on shield if you're willing to take the risk. Also, if you decide to use this option, I encourage you guys to try mixing up your stagger jabs with down tilt sometimes, just to switch up the height of your point of attack. And if you really want to throw somebody for a loop, rapid jab cross up their shield. You'll get hard punished if they don't fall for it, but if they do fall for it, you'll get the hard punish. High risk, high reward. All of these options I've talked about so far are cool, but if the opponent just shields the entire time, your pressure becomes a lot less threatening. Not useless or irrelevant, just less threatening. This is where grab comes in. Mixing in a grab will make them hesitate staying in shield for too long. Empty hop grab, or also known as tomahawk grab, is used very often in competitive play and will be the grab sequence we'll be working with today. The point of a tomahawk or empty hop is to make the opponent think you're going to attack with an aerial, scaring them into shielding, which you quickly punish with a grab once you land. For Sheik, it'll kind of be like a fake fair to grab. You want to keep them guessing even if they have their shield activated. Keep them on their toes the entire match. I call this a wild card because it's not something you're going to typically be using in your average neutral engagement. There's a very specific point during the match when this should be considered, and that's when your opponent is at kill percent. Earlier I mentioned having a couple of things to counter shield grabs. This is one of them. It's essentially a high risk bait and punish tool. You bait them to grab you, then punish them for doing it, like so. If your opponent tries to grab punish your fair, this option will get you a quick kill. I only recommend using this when you're ready to get the kill though. Up until that point, instead of fair to dare, try using fair to jab, or for a safer option, fair to down tilt on shields. I even like to mix mine up with fair to slingshot fair. I use that a lot. While fair to dare works on some aerial out of shield options, it doesn't work on most, especially the larger ones, like DK's Nair. So setting this up in a way that entices your opponent to go for a shield grab is key. Just like with fair to jab, try to land the fair close enough to them so that they instinctively go for a shield grab, or at the very least are tempted to. Keep in mind, if your opponent shields the fair and shields the dare, then this option is obviously punishable, unless you cross up their shield. making it a little less punishable. So be careful when throwing this out. Something that might help is to try and identify some of their out of shield habits beforehand to see if it's a viable option against that specific opponent. Fair to B reverse needles is another fantastic counter against shield grabs, but it's also good for out of shield aerials. One of the best parts of this is that the short hop version is oftentimes safe, even if they shield the needles, as long as you follow up with a jab or a shield of your own. So you can be a little more willy-nilly when throwing this out during a match. Here, there are two types of B reverse needles, short hop needles and full hop needles. Depending on the out of shield option your opponent chooses, these two variants will cover each other's weaknesses. If your opponent has a habit of using their full hop out of shield, which short hop needles won't punish, try the full hop needles instead. Here are some clips of both variants being put to use. Well, that's it, guys. Here's a brief montage of some of the options I went over today in actual matches. I prefer to use them out of fair because fair is such a great pressure tool, but feel free to use them in whatever way works best for you. Quick side note, I don't have enough footage saved of me playing matches, so I wasn't able to get footage of every option I covered. I play a lot of offline matches, but I almost never save the replays. Though that is the case, trust me when I say that the things I went over today are definitely things that I use consistently and options that I consider viable. Except for the fair to dare wild card. That one's just for funsies. Still works though. Here's a checklist summary of the options I went over today and what out of shield options they typically work against and don't work against. Now, when it comes to this summary, whenever I say something beats something else, I mean that the action either connects or is usable without getting punished. That's what I mean by beats. Sheik's shield pressure has the ability to be safe and consistent, and something I would love to see more Sheiks take advantage of at close range. That said, all of the options I spoke about today are just that. Options. You don't have to use them, especially if you already have something that works very well for you. Or you can even take what I showed, break it into pieces, and attach the ones you like the most to game plans that already work for you. This video was made to let you know that those options were available and how viable they could be. My closing points. 1. Landing fair on shield essentially forces a rock, paper, scissors moment, in which your opponent is compelled to react quickly, and by utilizing Sheik's crouch or down tilt during that moment, the likeliness of you getting punished for attacking decreases drastically, putting you in the perfect position to follow up with an appropriate response. 2. This is for the people who come into the Sheik Discord asking for help and for pointers on the matchup. Staying in shield may seem like the way to deal with this barrage I showcased, but it is not. If you use your shield too much, you might not have enough shield when the barrage continues and you need it most. Getting shield poked by needles or down tilt is the worst. Sheik's quick attacks can whittle down a shield in no time if you use your shield too much, so use it wisely. Also, you should never try to shield grab Sheik's fair because if they use some of the options I mentioned today, you could die. An aerial out of shield may seem like the way to go because that's the typical go-to escape option in Smash, but if you're using a rising aerial out of shield against Sheik and you whiff because of her crouch or down tilt, you're basically just begging to get punished, so be careful with that. I recommend seeing if you can somehow reset neutral, maybe with a roll, or just be really good at rock, paper, scissors. Either way, once she hits your shield, you're in a potentially bad spot. Thanks for watching. This has been Virgil with FaceOff out of Orlando, Florida. Yes, I said Orlando. So, Goblin, I saw the match between you and Webb. If you need help learning the matchup, let me know. I can teach you literally everything you need to know about that matchup. Also, shout out to Webb for holding down the Sheik game as of late. Super proud of you, bro. Your hard work is paying off. Keep up with that grind, my dude. Guys, please hit that subscribe button. YouTube won't let us customize our URL until we get 100 subscribers. Early YouTuber struggles, I'm telling you. Can't even customize our URL without a certain amount of subs. So we'd appreciate your support. Thanks.